The ferry horn sounded twice, low and unhurried, the way it always did when the fog sat heavy on Burrard Inlet. Most people on the dock did not look up. They had heard it too many times. Declan Whitfield had not heard it in 11 years. He stood at the edge of the platform with his cane held slightly out from his body, the tip an inch above the ground, reading the vibrations the way a man reads a room he cannot see. The ferry horn again. Closer. He turned his face toward the sound, and the fog touched his cheek, cold and thin, and he did not move. He was 63 years old. He had been a corporate lawyer for 31 of those years, senior partner at a firm whose name appeared on 3 floors of a building on West Georgia Street. He wore a charcoal overcoat that had been pressed the day before. His shoes were the kind that made a particular sound on tile. He carried nothing except the cane and his phone, which he could not read anymore, and which he used primarily to call his assistant, Renata, who read things to him. He did not like this. He had not liked it from the first morning he woke, and the ceiling had been wrong, not dark, not light, but simply absent, replaced by a smear of gray that no amount of blinking corrected. That had been 11 years ago. He had blinked for a long time. The ferry slowed, lines were thrown. Somewhere behind him a child was crying, and a woman's voice said, not unkindly, "We're almost there, bud. We're almost there." Declan listened to the crowd move around him. He had learned to do this, to hold still and let the current pass, to find the shape of a space by the way people moved through it. A group came off the ramp fast, rolling luggage, and the wheels clattered past his left side, close enough that he felt the displaced air. He stepped right, automatically. The cane found the edge of a gap between the dock planks, and he stopped. "Sir." He turned. The voice was young, younger than he expected. And it came from below, not much below, but below, the way a child's voice comes from a height that still surprises adults who have forgotten how recently they were that small. "Sir, there's a step down. It's about a foot, and the plank after it is wet." Declan did not move for a moment. He assessed the voice. 8, maybe 9. A girl, he thought, steady, not performing concern, just stating what she had seen. "Thank you," he said. "The railing's on your left. It's close, like really close." He found the railing with 2 inches to spare. He stepped down carefully, the wet plank giving slightly under his weight, and he planted the cane and stood and turned back toward where the voice had been. "Good call," he said. Nobody answered. The crowd had shifted. He wasn't sure she was still there. He wasn't sure who she was. Her name was Petra Huang. She was 9 years old, and she had been sitting on the dock bollard for 2 hours because her grandmother's bus was late, and the ferry terminal did not have a waiting room that stayed warm after 4 o'clock. She had her backpack on her lap, and inside the backpack was a library book she had already read twice, a sandwich she had already eaten, and a winter hat she was not going to wear, because she had decided she didn't like the way it made her ears look. She watched the man in the charcoal coat find the railing and sit down and plant his cane on the wet plank and not fall, and she felt something loosen in her chest that she had not known was tight. She had noticed him 3 minutes before he reached the gap. She had watched him the way she watched most things, quietly, from a still place, without being seen. She had seen the cane first, then the way he held his face, angled slightly up, as though reading the air rather than the ground. She knew what that meant. Her great-uncle had walked like that in his last years, chin lifted, listening. She had gotten off the bollard without thinking about it. Now the man was moving along the dock toward the terminal, the cane sweeping in a short, practiced arc, and the crowd was thinning, and she watched him go. Her grandmother's bus was another 40 minutes, at least. The terminal was cold, the bollard was hard. She picked up her backpack and followed him. She was not sure why. She told herself it was because the terminal was warmer. She told herself it was because the man walked slowly, and she walked slowly, and it was the same direction. She told herself a lot of things, and none of them were wrong exactly, but none of them were the whole truth either. The whole truth was simpler. She had been waiting alone for 2 hours, and the man in the charcoal coat looked like he was also, in some essential way, waiting alone, and she found that easier to be near than the alternatives. Inside the terminal, Declan found a bench by texture, wooden slats, metal armrests, the particular hollow sound his coat made when it brushed the back. He sat. He placed the cane across his knees. He had a meeting in the morning, a deposition that Renata had already prepped twice, and he was trying to hold the structure of it in his mind so that the night did not dismantle it. He heard small sneakers stop near him. "Hi," said the voice from the dock. "Hello again," he said. A pause. "Are you waiting for someone? A cab? You? My grandma Evelyn. Her bus is late." Declan nodded. He could hear her sit down, not right beside him, but close, the bench shifting slightly, the backpack hitting the slat with a soft thud. "You live in Vancouver?" he asked. "Burnaby. But my mom and I come to Victoria sometimes to see my grandma." Another pause. "She lives here now. She moved here because of the garden. She has a tulip bed that she's been growing for 8 years. She says you can't move a tulip bed. That's true, he said. You can, actually. But you have to know what you're doing. Do you know what you're doing? He considered this. Less and less, he said. He heard her shift on the bench. He had the impression she was looking at him carefully, the way children did, without the social cushioning that told adults to look away. What happened to your eyes? She asked. Most adults didn't ask. Children asked directly, and Declan had long since decided he preferred it. The nerve behind them stopped working, he said. 11 years ago. Can it be fixed? No. How do you do stuff? Like work stuff. I have help. And I've learned to do a lot differently than I used to. Like what? I read with my ears now. Someone reads documents to me, or software does. I move through buildings I know mostly by memory. New ones take longer. He paused. I was better at it when I cared more about being good at it. She was quiet for a moment. What changed? It was, he thought, an extraordinary question for a 9-year-old. He almost didn't answer it. But there was something about her stillness, the way she asked without leaning in, without needing him to perform an emotion, that made the truth feel more available than it usually did. My daughter stopped calling, he said. Another pause. Because of your eyes? Before that, he said. The eyes just made it quieter. He heard her pull her backpack onto her lap. A zipper opened. A book was removed. He heard the particular sound of paperback, the slight creak of a spine not fully broken. I'm going to read, she said. You can keep talking if you want, or not. Both is fine. He almost smiled. Both is fine, he repeated. He leaned back on the bench. Outside, the fog had come fully in off the water. He couldn't see it, but he could feel the shift in the air through the terminal's automatic doors, the cold arriving in pulses each time someone entered. He tracked the crowd by its sound. A family with a stroller. A man who smelled of cedar and coffee. Someone's luggage wheel needed oiling. What are you reading? He said after a while. A book about a lighthouse keeper, Petra said without looking up. He could tell by the direction of her voice. He lives alone on an island and he thinks he doesn't need anyone. And then a storm comes. Does it end well? I don't know yet. I've read it twice, and I always stop in the same spot. Where? The part where he sees the rescue boat, and he doesn't know whether to wave it in or wave it away. Declan was quiet. That's a good spot to stop, he said. I know, she said. That's why I stopped there. The cab was running late. Declan had called Renata, who had called the dispatcher, who had said 20 minutes. That had been 35 minutes ago. He had stopped being annoyed somewhere around the 20-minute mark and had arrived at something closer to acceptance, which at his age felt increasingly like the same thing as tired. Do you have someone meeting you in Vancouver? Petra asked. She had closed her book. He heard the zipper again, the thud of the bag. A driver, usually. Tonight, a cab. Do you live alone? I do. She processed this. My grandma lives alone too, she said. She says it's fine once you learn which silences are comfortable and which ones aren't. She sounds like a wise woman. She's pretty opinionated, Petra said, in a tone that suggested this was not a criticism. She says opinions are what happens when you pay attention for long enough. I'll remember that. A door opened. Cold air came in strong. Footsteps, then a voice, older, female, slightly out of breath. Petra, I'm so sorry, the bus. It's fine, Grandma, Petra said, and the bench shifted as she stood. I was talking. A pause. He heard the grandmother stop a few feet away. He had the impression she was looking at him. This is, Petra hesitated. I don't know your name, Declan, he said. He stood as he would for anyone. Declan Whitfield. I'm Petra Huang. I told him about your tulips. Oh, a small warm sound. Well, don't let him have any. Despite himself, Declan laughed. It was a sound that surprised him, not the polished boardroom version, but the real one, which he had not heard from himself in some time. Rough at the edges, genuine. He knows you can move them, Petra said. He says you have to know what you're doing. The grandmother, her name he would learn later was Evelyn Guo, sounded unimpressed and entirely unoffended simultaneously. Are you waiting long, Mr. Whitfield? My cab is delayed. I'll manage. You'll wait inside with us, she said. It was not a question. He opened his mouth. I don't want to impose. You've been talking to my granddaughter for Petra. How long? Petra. About an hour, Petra said. An hour. You're past imposing. Sit down. He sat down. Evelyn Guo was 71 years old and had come to Victoria because of the tulips, and because of the quiet, and because, as she told Declan over the next half hour, Vancouver had started to feel like a city that was always in the middle of something, and she had reached the age where she preferred cities that had already decided what they were. She did not ask about his eyes. She asked about the law. Corporate, he said. Useful, she said. My husband was a contractor. He needed a lawyer twice. Both times he wished he'd called sooner. They usually do. You're still working? I'm still working. Good, she said simply. Not like someone surprised, like someone who found the alternative obvious and uninteresting. He found this unexpectedly bracing. He had spent 11 years in the presence of a particular kind of concern, the kind that softened its voice when it spoke to him, that held its helpfulness slightly too close, that meant well, and left him feeling reduced. Evelyn Guo spoke to him like a person she had just met, which was, he reflected, exactly what he was. Petra had fallen asleep against her grandmother's shoulder somewhere around the 40-minute mark. He could hear her breathing. "She's the one who flagged me at the dock," he said quietly. "She mentioned the step," Evelyn said. "She told me on the way in. She was matter-of-fact about it. She's matter-of-fact about most things. It gets her in trouble at school." A pause. "They want her to be more. They use the word collaborative. What they mean is quieter. She was quiet with me. She's quiet with people she's trying to understand." Evelyn paused. "She doesn't think you need looking after, if that's what you're wondering. She thinks you need someone to point out the step." Declan was quiet for a moment. "There's a difference," he said. "She knows that," Evelyn said. "She's 9, not obtuse," the cab dispatcher called. 7 minutes. He told Renata, who relayed it. He sat back. "She said your daughter stopped calling," Evelyn said. He went still. "She told you that, while you were on the phone." No apology in her voice, no excess of delicacy. "That's a hard thing." "It is. Have you called her?" He had expected something softer. The question landed flat and direct. "Not recently," he said. Recently meaning 14 months. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "Is she waiting?" He hadn't framed it that way. He had framed it as distance, as a silence that had grown its own weight, as something that would require a conversation he did not know how to begin. He had not framed it as waiting. "I don't know," he said. "You could find out," she said. The cab arrived. He heard it outside. The particular idle of a sedan, the slight creak of brakes on wet pavement. He stood. He gathered his cane. "It was good to meet you, Mrs. Guo." "Evelyn! Evelyn!" He turned toward where Petra was sleeping. He did not wake her. He said, to the general space where she sat, "Goodbye, Petra." She stirred slightly. "Goodbye, Declan," she said, still mostly asleep. He walked to the door. Outside, the fog had thickened. The cab driver took his elbow without being asked, gently, efficiently, the practiced gesture of someone who had done it before, and guided him to the door. He got in. The car was warm. The seat held him. He asked the driver to give him a moment before they left. Then he took out his phone and told it to call his daughter. It rang 4 times, he counted. She answered on the 5th. "Dad," she said. It was one word. He could not see her face. He had not seen her face in 11 years. But he knew the sound of her voice the way he knew the weight of the air before rain, and what he heard in it was not coldness, was not finality, was, he thought, something closer to relief. "Hi," he said. And then, because he had been carrying it for 14 months and it had grown too heavy to carry correctly, "I'm sorry it's been so long." She didn't speak immediately. When she did, her voice had changed in a way he could not quite name. Opened, slightly. Like a door moved from a closed position to not quite closed. "Where are you?" she said. "Victoria. Heading home." A pause. "Can we talk? When I'm back?" Another pause. Longer. He counted the seconds the way he had learned to count everything. Not impatiently, but precisely, because precision was what he had instead of sight, and it had taught him that the length of a silence said as much as what came after it. "Yeah," she said. "Come for dinner Saturday." He exhaled. The cab pulled out of the terminal. The fog swallowed the dock lights. The water was somewhere to his left, close enough to feel. He knew this stretch of road, had driven it himself before the gray had taken everything, and he held the memory of it like a map, a reliable map, the kind that did not lie about distances. He thought about Petra, about the way she had calculated the step before he reached it, not rushing to him, not making a production, just getting off the bollard and moving to where she could be useful and saying what she saw. The step is there. The plank is wet. The railing is close. He thought about the lighthouse keeper in her book. The one who stood in the storm and watched the rescue boat come and did not know, yet, whether to wave it in. He knew which choice the man made. He had always known. The book was the kind that you stopped in the right place to hold the question. But the answer had always been there, plain and patient, waiting for the moment the question was ready to receive it. The cab moved through the fog. He kept the phone in his hand. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday that arrived gray and sharp with the particular cold that Vancouver saved for early November, Declan Whitfield took the SkyTrain to his daughter's neighborhood for the first time. Her name was Margot. She had her mother's voice, and he had always thought his capacity for silence, the kind that was not absence but attention. She met him at the station. She did not offer her arm. She fell into step beside him, and when the path narrowed at the crossing, she said, "Curb in 3 steps," and he stepped down without breaking stride. "Someone taught me that," he said. "Taught you what?" "That there's a difference between helping someone and telling them what's in front of them." Margot was quiet for a moment. They walked. "Who taught you that?" A 9-year-old I met at the ferry terminal in Victoria. Were you visiting a client? No, he said. I was waiting out the fog. She didn't push. That was the thing about Margot. She had never pushed. She had pulled back when he became difficult, which he had during the years the gray took hold, and he had directed his helplessness outward, toward the people nearest him, toward the people who had stayed. She had pulled back, and the distance had grown its own weight, and neither of them had known how to lift it. He had not known, until a 9-year-old told him about a lighthouse keeper, and her grandmother told him flatly that he could find out. Her apartment smelled of roasted garlic and something with citrus. He stood in the entrance, and she took his coat, and he heard the familiar sounds of a kitchen in the middle of a meal, a timer, a stove element, the particular percussion of a spoon against a pot. "I'm making soup," she said, "from a recipe Mom used to do." He stood in the entrance. He had expected this to be harder. He had spent 14 months building the difficulty of it in his mind, constructing the conversation like a case he was not sure he could win. He had prepared arguments. He had anticipated silences. He had not anticipated soup. "Can I help?" he said. Margot was quiet for a beat. "You can stir," she said, "if you want. The pot's on the left burner. I'll tell you when." "Okay," he said. He moved toward the kitchen. He found the counter with one hand, the cane with the other, the warm air from the stove reaching him like something he did not have a precise word for. He put the cane against the wall. He put his hand out, and she put the spoon in it. "Left burner," she said. "About 2 o'clock from where you're standing." He found it. He stirred. The kitchen smelled of his ex-wife's soup, which was also his soup, which was also Margot's soup, which was the kind of thing that traveled through families not because anyone decided to carry it, but because it was too good to let go. "I missed you," he said, while he was stirring, which was the right time to say it because his back was partly to her, and there was something else to do with his hands. She didn't answer right away. The timer went. She moved behind him, pulled something from the oven, set it on the counter. "I know," she said. "I was difficult." "You were," she said. "So was I." "I have a Saturday now," he said. "If that works." "It works," she said. Outside, the November gray pressed against the window. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it the way he felt most things these days. By what it did to the air, by the quality of the warmth it pushed against, by the way the room held itself differently when the light outside was low. The soup was almost ready. He could tell by the sound of it, the way the simmer deepened into something slower and fuller, the way the smell changed from raw to finished, from almost to there. He thought, briefly, of Petra Huang on the bollard in the fog, her library book, her uneaten hat, her calm and direct accounting of what lay between him and the dock. He did not know her. He might never see her again. She had been a girl waiting for her grandmother, and he had been a man waiting for a cab, and between those two waitings she had done nothing more complicated than get off her bollard and say what she saw. Sometimes that was the whole thing. Sometimes that was all it took. He stirred until Margot said, "Stop," and then he stopped, and she handed him a bowl with the matter-of-fact precision of someone who had finally figured out that love was not about what you shielded people from, but what you put into their hands. He held the bowl with both hands. It was warm all the way through.